Dan, we wanted to go through a couple of League of Ireland tidbits over the next little while, I guess, before we get into your breakthrough stars of the season, which is one of the things we wanted to do. We just got to talk about Rovers Bows this Friday.
Yeah, it's a sort of a strange old time in the League of Ireland. It's actually a time of the year I quite enjoy. That a lot of the other football stops. Obviously, for a lot of people they're in the sort of season is over mode. But the League of Ireland being a summer campaign, it's sort of it's always a little bit it comes back out of the summer break, and it's always a little bit overshadowed by the international break naturally, and the hangover from that. But now you have this sort of run over the next sort of month, 5 weeks or so, and even particularly with I know it's a slight side story, but even the fact that GEA is finishing so early this year, and the calendar's it's not as dense as it would be, so a lot of counties will obviously be gone or will have lost interest.
The European runs could coincide perfectly.
That's what I'm saying.
Zone,
there's a little sweet spot there in July where if one of the clubs, and it's more likely to be Shamrock Rovers just because of the nature of the competition they're in, they get a couple of cracks at it. But they actually do have an opportunity this year to sort of absorb a fair amount of interest and attention if they can get it right. And there's also 3 clubs in the Conference League as well. So it's been the fact that Rovers Bows, again, it's sold out 4 days in advance. It's sort of been in keeping with the story of the season, and that crowds have been very good generally this year. And I'm not sure if there's I don't think it's necessarily reflected in more discussion around the place or more media coverage and stuff. I think that's been pretty solid and stable as it has been over the last couple of seasons. But there's no doubt that probably post COVID or whatever, more people are going, and I think individually clubs are doing more work to sort of hold their fan base. And I think sometimes you always talk about the League of Ireland sometimes in very broad terms of how can we get more people interested, but almost the first step to that, really more than anything, is getting your own sort of casual fan base tied down and becoming more regular. And I think that's what you're seeing happen, and probably particularly in Dublin, where you have a situation now in Tallaght and the Shamrock Rovers ground where, when they would have been doing maybe the third stand there, there might have been some people who might have thought, well, the average attendance here is whatever, 3,000-4,000. Why do they almost need this third stand, or is this essential? And now you're looking at a situation where it is sort of a build it and they will come type thing, where they're sort of regularly getting more than 7,000 people in Tallaght, and they're in the process of actually doing the fourth stand behind the goal, which is going to, they're starting construction work on that now, which is going to bring the capacity towards 10,000. And now I'm looking at this going, this is justifiable.
Yeah.
Whereas 6-7 years ago there was a couple of thousand people going to their games, so it's mad. But Rovers Bows is sold out 3-4 days in advance. That's 7,500 people going, and there's been definitely a spectating revival of sorts in Dublin. Or maybe is it a revival, or is it more an overdue tapping into the population that's there?
Yeah.
Because in my time maybe covering the league, certainly Dublin has been, you'd often go around the country to say Cork or Dundalk and Sligo at times and talk about, isn't it great the community are involved in this, and actually maybe just belatedly some of the clubs in Dublin are doing that, and because a lot of the media are based in Dublin, maybe there's more positivity about the league this year because you're actually seeing and hearing a lot more people going to games, which is a big point, which is pretty important.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Were you worried a couple of weeks ago that this title race is going to just run away from the neutral entirely, and is it back on song again? Yeah,
I think this is the thing. So Dundalk beat Shamrock Rovers on Friday. I think it was mentioned yesterday, all right, that they're 5 points behind now with a game in hand. But it's still there's still this probably niggling sense that Shamrock Rovers are going to probably win the league and probably run away from it unless Europe becomes such a distraction for them that it opens the door for someone else. But that certainly has been the issue with the last couple of seasons. Shamrock Rovers have won the league but probably haven't got a huge amount of external sort of love or not been part of big team of the year discussions or anything like that, because there's probably a sense that it's been quite comfortable for them in the league. They haven't really been pushed. They haven't really faced an outstanding challenger. You had that excellent Dundalk team, which Stephen started with Stephen Kenny's era and was the dominant team, and basically imploded through just bad sort of decisions off the pitch, and almost Shamrock Rovers were coming along to probably try and knock Dundalk off their perch, but then the Dundalk took themselves off the perch before anyone could get there. They toppled themselves, and So Shamrock Rovers have taken the crown, and now, bizarrely enough, it's possible that their challenger this year is going to be Dundalk again, because they've got Stephen O'Donnell in, and in a very short space of time, he's probably built a sort of environment that may look like it might endure and challenge and give us some kind of title race, because certainly the last couple of seasons, and I've even Declan McBennett from RTE has made this point and stuff, when there's criticism around TV coverage, it doesn't help when come October, November, there's no, well, this is the game to win the league, or this is the key match of the season, like you might have had with some of those Cork and Dock games in the last decade. Every year there was almost a big pivotal game. You haven't really had that the last couple of years, and certainly it would help. But it looked like Derry City were going to be the team that would challenge. Their form has gone off a cliff since they played Rovers and Tala and were very good. And now Dundalk seem to have sort of slipped up the rails, and they might be poised to challenge.
We wanted to go through some of the breakthrough stars of the League of Ireland season so far. So what we've done is, what you've picked out, 5 players.
Picked out 5, yeah. 5.
Born the century.
Yeah, born the century, because I think there's no doubt that the big change with the league in the last couple of years is the age profile. And you have a situation now where I suppose you're always talking about, like, how do you make the league accessible to people? And we now have a situation where I suppose in 5-6 years' time, hopefully, the Irish senior team has players like Nathan Collins and Jason Knight, and the generation that's there at the moment, Troy Parr. I know Gavin Bazunu did play here, but still probably those players that play senior football here are the minority in terms of the senior squad, although there's been a greater increase in traffic. But now, obviously, unless players go to Europe at 16, 17, the top talents will generally play here, and you'll get to see them here maybe for a while before moving on. Now, I'm not sure if these players are all sort of going to go on and play senior international football, but they are all under the age of sort of 22 or under, and 5 big names this year. So, will I just run through them?
Yeah, like we start with Andy Lyons.
Yeah, so Andy Lyons is probably the like, he's not, to describe him as a breakthrough star is maybe slightly unusual, because he's quite a well-known player with Bows over the last couple of seasons, including, like, he broke into the Ireland 21 squad while at Bows. But he's one this year who has gone from Bows to Shamrock Rovers over the winter. Controversial transfer, but there was probably a lot of Bows fans going, do you know what, like, he's probably a bit, like, he's not as good as he used to be. He's maybe a little bit overrated. I think he was keen to go to the UK, and I'm not sure if he was really getting bites. There would have been compensation issues. I think that if it come to it, the people from Bows would say there wouldn't have been an issue there. But either way, he went to Shamrock Rovers, and it was almost a sense of, like, it's no great loss to Bows. And he's gone from being a right back with Bows to a left wing back at Shamrock Rovers, and all of a sudden has brought his performances absolutely to another level.
It's on an attacking level, isn't it?
On an attacking level, yeah. Like, he's scored quite a few goals in the opening sort of third of the season. He had international duty last month. He wasn't involved in Dundalk last week, and I presume it's a carry on from that. But he's been exceptionally good, and probably one of those where, like, Shamrock Rovers are trying to create probably, some kind of elite environment out there. And last year they took Danny Mandroyo from Bows to Shamrock Rovers. Again, at Bows there was mixed views around him, and he went to Tala and he sort of went to another level, got into an Ireland squad, and in fact was on standby for the Ireland squad last month. And Andy Lyons again is one who suddenly he's changed environment, and for whatever reason he seems to have taken flight, and now looks like a really good player who probably who will have proper UK interest now. If it comes to pass, he's definitely one that stood out this year. Yeah.
And is Stephen Bradley's decision to stay at the club, do you think, keeping this team a little bit more close knit? You mentioned the English links were more during his Bows time, though.
Yeah. Well, it was more. See, he was out of contract at Bows, and basically it came to the stage where if you're an out of contract player, I think he was desperate to go to England, to be honest. But I'm not sure if there was any real, like, there was a bit of interest, but not enough to maybe trigger someone. They would have had to do a deal with Bows, and then to move within one domestic club, there's a smaller amount of money involved without getting bogged down in sort of compensation things. But it was a little bit of for Rovers, it was a sense of, are they just stockpiling a player here because he's a good local player? But actually no, they've turned him into, or he has turned out to be a signing that I think even Rovers players, he's been better than they thought as well. They would sort of tell you that privately. Yeah.
Next up, we've got Dundalk goalkeeper Nathan Shepherd.
Yeah,
a strange path on this man's career?
Yeah, so he's the Welsh under-21 goalkeeper. So Dundalk last season, with all the other stuff that was going on off the park, which contributed to their downfall, they also had like dreadful goalkeeping issues, to the point where they had Albanian Italian goalkeeper called Alessio Abibi, who I think through the American ownership and management team, they thought that this guy would be the answer, and he was not the answer, with all due respect to that. He was very confident, good interview, not as good at goalkeeping. And it really cost them big time.
There's a book in the Italian links with Dundalk.
There actually, there definitely is. Someone just needs to motivate themselves to get stuck into it. But so they signed this Welsh under-21 goalkeeper, Nathan Shepherd, at the start of the year, previously with Brentford B, and he's quite young looking as well. Like I'm not sure, is he 22 or 21? But he probably looks younger. You know, he sort of has that sort of choir boy look or something. And in his first game or two, he looked a little bit ropey. You could see teams putting corners in on top of him and thinking they might dominate this fella. And actually, since then, his performance levels have been really good. He's been exceptionally good for Dundalk, really. To the point, I think when he joined, he was Welsh under-21 backup keeper, but he's played himself. He's made himself their first choice on the strength of his performances with Dundalk. You know, that Welsh football has this programme which is like they're probably like a sort of an against the head or a magazine style programme, and like there was 3 Welsh lads at Dundalk at the start of the season, and like they did this like 20-minute feature of up with the lads around Dundalk, like our Welsh, like it's sort of a surreal thing that like you get more magazine TV coverage in Wales than there's no equivalent Irish version of this, you know, and they're like very interested as to why are so many of Welsh underage internationals playing in this town in Ireland. It's very unusual, but it's actually boosted their profile at home, and Shepherd's been excellent. So he's sort of in their title challenge, which may now exist, he's been a key element of it.
Absolutely. Next up we've got Sam Curtis of St. Pat's, and in the Indo this morning, David Kelly just mentioning the links with Feyenoord, which I think have been reported. Yeah,
I think Neil O'Riordan and the Sun had mentioned that, but this is what I'm talking about in terms of the type of player you're going to see in the league now. Like Sam Curtis is only 16, probably at another time Sam Curtis would have gone to wherever, some English club by now. He would have gone on his 16th birthday or the summer of his 16th birthday. It's different, but like James Abankwah, who played for Pats, broke through last year. Would have been slightly older than Curtis is now, but got his move to Udinese, and he's on his way there this summer. Curtis is a right back. He's a defender, but he's been playing right back, having previously been with Shamrock Rovers and played for their second team, I think at the age of like 14 and a half, but then made a move to St. Pat's, which was sort of controversial in some ways to people. But Pats have obviously promised him a degree of first team football, and yeah, he's had some tough days, there's no doubt. Like there was one game recently against Shells, he was taken off at half time, he was on a yellow, he was struggling, but he played like 72 hours later and was very good, which sort of suggests a degree of character. And this is the point, like he's getting exposure to first team men's football at a good level at 16, and it's no surprise now you're hearing about Feyenoord and other European clubs, and you are going to see more of this. You're going to see clubs playing players here at 16, 17, because these are going to be the top ones of that generation. But obviously you need to make this an industry, so sometimes with that, I mean, Curtis is clearly good enough to play now, there's nothing tokenistic about it, but obviously you will see clubs will probably be happy to expose players because that's going to increase their value as well too. Because everyone dreams of a sort of a Gavin Bazulu style sale, which is now basically ended up being worth around £3 million to Shamrock Rovers.
Yeah, serious windfall. We'll try and come back to that conversation a little later on. And but it's really interesting, especially with the Carl Heffernan news yesterday as well about that pathway. Just to finish up on the 5 players, Jack Moylan of Shells is next up.
Yeah, to be quick with Jack Moylan, like he's Damien Duff Shelburne, to give them their full title. He was on loan at Wexford from Bows last season. Did well in the first division, but the first division is a little bit out of mind to some degree. And over the winter, turned out for whatever reason he was allowed leave Bows and join Shells. So I think it's a bit of a low profile signing, but some people in the game were saying, no, this is a proper player, look out for him. He's been excellent. He's a sort of a number 10 creative style player. It's his first season in the Premier Division, and he's getting better and better all the time. So he's definitely one to look out for.
And then Brandon. Well, actually, sorry, just on Jack Moylan. Sorry, just before we move on, like it's very hard to judge it just yet because it's season 1 under Damien Duff. But is your sense that the expectation of Duff to be able to take these younger players and to be able to build them into something better and to, I guess, impart all his wisdom on these players, is that working so far? I appreciate it's very, very hard.
I think it's
to get a sense of.
I think it's going okay. I think it is going okay. I know they lost last week, but prior to the break they'd won I think 4 in a row before they lost to Shamrock Rovers. Duff signed a lot of the same type of player, sort of with that profile, young, on the way up, not necessarily well known within the league, but with a desire to get better. Training sort of full-time hours in football, and maybe budgets dictate some of their recruitment as well, but they're generally a quite focused, hungry team, quite united. You see they're, socially they go on very well and stuff, and no, I think he's doing well.
Right.
I think he's doing well. I think it's got a chance of getting better there, yeah.
Good stuff. And then finally we're moving on to Brandon Cavanagh of Derry, who moved from Shamrock Rovers.
Yeah, there's a couple you could have put in here. Brandon Cavanagh, I suppose you need to have some kind of Derry representation. There's probably Brandon Cavanagh and the goalkeeper, Brian Maher, maybe I could have mentioned as well, who's the Ireland 21 goalkeeper. But Cavanagh, again, I suppose you're talking maybe about players people might want to go and watch, and he's again a playmaker type player. He can play in the number 10 or sort of left or right. He was at Shamrock Rovers and he seemed to be out on loan all the time. And Derry just took a chance at him by giving him a sort of a proper sort of long-term contract. He's moved from Dublin to Derry and he's done well. Again, he's someone who, when he broke through at Rovers at 17-18, people thought he was going to be on the conveyor belt of talent that goes away, and it hasn't quite happened. But probably like a sort of in some people's eyes, maybe some like Wes Hoolahan characteristics. Brandon Cavanagh, he's small, he's not the biggest fella, but good to watch. And he's been one of the names this year that's probably his first full season as a sort of a first teamer in the Premier Division, and he's done well.
Right, okay, very interesting. So those are your 5, like an arbitrary enough number 5.
Yeah, just to look out, yeah.
There's plenty more as well, and we're going to come back to that conversation if we have time throughout the show, because as I said, there's plenty of reaction to that, and there's kind of wider conversations around path